why not? He's Jeff.
And he's Michael.
And that's totally corny.
We are back. Jeff Swearing. And I know what the topic is, but, you know, the elephant in the room right now is, man, what a crazy week that was last week. We have a new president.
It is interesting.
It's like, are you happy about the results? Tell me, what do you think?
I can't really speak to that yet, Michael. I'm reserving my judgment for a bit. So.
Well, congratulations to the new president of the United States. Full disclosure, everyone. Jeff and I are pre-recording this. It's what's today? October 18th?
18th, yes.
So we have a new president. I actually don't know because, you know, the way elections have gone the last few rounds is maybe they're still counting. Are they still counting? Maybe we don't know who won.
Oh yeah, I mean, we may not have, or at least know we have it. We may not know whether there's a president. Well, it's going to be a new president one way or the other.
We have a new president. That's definitive for sure. Maybe no. Maybe we have an old president as the new president.
Yeah, who knows?
And currently the polls are leaning that way, right? The polls are leaning that way on October 18th, and I think that's definitely that's a good outcome. We don't get political here, but I think we're probably in agreement that that's probably the best for all. Congratulations.
Well, I do. I mean, I don't know that this is a political statement, but I do see that there's kind of an important thing from a societal standpoint that whatever happens in the elections, working towards people being confident that this worked well. And I see that in the same vein of you can get information anywhere now, which means that we're no longer talking from the same information. You know, it used to be, I mean, you and I may be worlds apart, politically divided there, but the base of information we were talking about was the same, so we could actually have a legitimate conversation. Now I could be talking to someone who has just a completely different base of information, and that makes it really hard to have a society. And I think how elections work, being confident of that, is one of those things that provides a base that as a society we can work forward. So I'm curious to see how that plays out with this particular election, because that was in contrast, or that was in contention last election.
Yeah, we used to have the night of, we know, right? It's been declared so-and-so is the next president of the United States. And it was the next morning, you knew. And now, and if that is a thing of the past, that's bad, right? That bodes poorly if you can't have a definitive answer the next, like on election day, if it's,
Is that the case? Because, I mean, I think back 50, 100 years ago, and that was just impossible to do. I think what that was a sign of is how robust and reliable the election process was, that you could do stuff like that. So it's a reflection of the reliability of the election process, which I think is important. So,
all right, well, congratulations, Donald Trump. Rewind. Congratulations, Kamala Harris. Edit one of these. No, Gina, don't edit them. Keep them both in.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that was kind of a transition. You're talking about information now. You know, we receive and accept and adopt information and knowledge and news differently now than we have in the past, and that would be because of social media or technological advancement. Technically, all right. I mean, so. I guess the question is social media intrinsically evil?
Yeah, and that's an interesting question. Yeah, because I think you and I have been, we've talked back and forth about, artificial intelligence is kind of that same. Is it a technology? And in my opinion, technology is morally neutral. It's how do we use the technology?
Right.
I wonder about that with social media, and not the specific question I have, and because this is where I've wrestled with it myself, is I find social media addictive. That going in and just looking a little bit, finding the piece of information, reading a little bit, and then walking away, I find to be very hard to do. I will find myself scrolling, looking for the next funny thing. It's
Designed that way.
it's and yeah, so I find it addictive, and it's designed to be addictive. So it seems like we've moved beyond just a technology to something that has a moral component built into it.
Hmm.
And that's kind of my question is, is social media good or good or not? And I'll just state up front, I'm not looking in here saying, oh, should we regulate social media or whatever?
Right.
This is really more from the standpoint of I'm a Christian, I'm in a community of Christians. What should we do with this? There's no sense where I would send my kids out into a dangerous environment without preparing them for that. I candidly don't find the church talking a lot about this aspect. And so this is kind of the nature of my question.
Got it. So it's the addictive nature of social media that we're really talking about, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's absolute. I mean, they've acknowledged it, right? I mean, they've admitted we've essentially set aside like children, have normally been a untouchable, don't touch them. The law protects them, except now in social media, like peel back the layers when, I don't know if it was Facebook or Instagram or something, when, they have an upper limit, right? It's all based on growth, right? We need to grow our subscribership, our membership. Like the company model is we have to have growth. Otherwise we're unhealthy, right? It's just that notion. And you can max out if you're only hitting a certain demographic. And so they would have to expand their outreach or a new market to youth and to children. And that's been demonstrated, immorally, that they have recognized the addictive nature and the susceptibility of young people to this thing and capitalized on it and destroyed a lot of lives in the process. Right. And that's really what we're talking about. Right.
Right.
So,
well, there's that's very much a component, and that's a great discussion to have. I also wonder too, we talk about how it's marketed towards children and they're susceptible, but I don't know, as adults, I'm no longer susceptible to it. And so even as an adult level, what do we do with it? Because there's an aspect of my job, which is, kind of promotion of, here are the thoughts, get the ideas out there, and social media is the forum to do that. And one of the questions I wrestle with is, I'm kind of prone to addiction on social media. Should I be encouraging people to engage social media by, I've kind of been half hoping someone could give me a good reason to do that isn't just suck it up and deal with it. So,
well, I got to check something here at work. All right. Sorry. As I am reflecting on my social media habits and in the past. So I was on Facebook for a while. I resisted it for a long time. And then I created an account that wasn't my name, but it was mine. People knew it. I mean, it was my first name, and then my middle name was my last name. Right. So I was like, I'm going to do this for, and I just focused on one thing. I was in a band. I'm still in the band, but when our band was more active. So I was always, wanting to check it, right? Has anybody commented, or how many likes, or whatever it is, how many, always just kind of those little things that get you to go back to it all the time. And that's that, built in, I need more, I need to, I just want, I don't know. It just draws you there, and it's a mind suck, and it's a distraction, etc. But I am no longer like I've been delivered, or actually technically what happened is I was hacked. Somebody sent me a message I thought was one of my friends that I hadn't seen in a long time, and I clicked on it, and then within, I don't know if it was that day or within a day or two, I had other friends saying, "Hey, did you send me a link to this or that?" And they get into your contacts and send all kinds of garbage. And I'm like, no. So I disabled it and I haven't been on Facebook since. And that was pre-pandemic. Like I was off Facebook.
That's quite a while then.
But now I have a project that I'm working on, that I've been working on, and it's about time to, kind of go more public with it. And so I have somebody who's built established a Facebook page for the project, and we're about to, so they're tools that can be used, and you kind of have to use them in today's age. But it's the addictive nature that when they consume you or distract you. And I've obviously find myself, like, now I'm on YouTube, and I do watch a lot of stuff on YouTube, and more than I should. Or my wife has discovered, I don't know if it's TikTok or YouTube Shorts, but I'm like, I see her, more than in the past. So here's my question.
Yeah. What is your question?
It's addiction that's the issue, right? Like the addictive nature
Right.
that's problematic. But is it problematic? What is addiction bad?
You're gonna have to ask that question, or flesh that out a little bit, because I would say anything from a scriptural perspective, anything that controls you other than the spirit, which is what an addiction would be, that is a bad thing. So if you're being controlled by, I have to look, then I would say that is a bad thing, or that's a sign of immaturity in Christ at the very minimal.
Well, all right, you already circumvented it. Well, if you're addicted to Christ, you're addicted to the Bible, you're addicted to spiritual things. So honestly, these things have been manipulated by businesses that want you to buy their stuff, or want you to, et cetera. And like, well, what if the hub, or when Elon Musk bought Twitter and changed it to X, it changed a lot of things. It took away a monopoly from information technology, right? It's like there's one political side of the aisle, or one, not even necessarily political. There's an agenda side of the aisle, and Elon Musk, in his efforts, is trying to make it more, open,
Right.
And so what if a Christian, right, an actual believing Christian, and not just a foolhardy Christian, but a wise, savvy, technologically, knowledgeable, true believer, were at the helm of all of this information technology? Those algorithms, those things can all be pointed in a different direction, right? To get people addicted or obsessed with good things. Like, what if, right? There's so many miracle. For example, here's what I would do if I were in that position. There are so many true miracle stories, like true miracle stories that happen in the world that are verifiable, documentable. J.P. Moreland, in a book he put out a year and a half ago, How to Experience Miracles. He documents. He says there's more than 300 million verifiable, documented miracles that are in the world. What if that was the subject of this TikTok channel, and it became the biggest TikTok channel? Everybody was just wanting to learn more about these true miracles, and it was, faith encouraging. I think that's something that could happen and may actually be in our future, something like that. So
that's interesting, because as I've been trying to read about social media and how it works, there's a fellow that I work with, in our scholar community, who's a doctor, who's kind of done some of this work, or at least investigated people who've written about the damage that it's done to teenage mental health and stuff like that. And what's interesting in his description is that it's even if the content were directed towards Christ in that sense, it seems like there's this comparative nature that comes up. So the fact that I click on it and I want to look at the next one and the next one and the next one, and their miracle's bigger than my miracle, or there's this, even I'm not sure that would circumvent the at least as I've read some of the stuff that shows up in the mental health, is that you get a depression and anxiety because there's this, I'm always comparing, and there's always people better, there's more. It kind of breeds a dissatisfaction, and then others have more stuff, others have better things than I do. It seems like that would still be inherent in that technology, even though it is better, and that you're kind of directing people towards thinking about Christ.
I see what you're saying, and as you're presenting that, my kind of counter maybe argument, right, theoretical, is I understand there's the comparative, like I'm always wanting to compare and one up, and this video is more interesting than that video, and this person's experience is more interesting than that experience. And then also the self-reflection is like, well, why am I not experiencing these things? Or right, like those are all the
Right.
negatives that would absolutely be there. It would come along. However, in the above all that is this would be spreading truth
Mhm.
uh, massively like never before,
Right.
and the number of people that would actually be transformed by these testimonies would I think eventually crowd out all the negative behaviors. I think people coming to Christ, and I think true community would be easier that way. That you emphasize getting together.
Mm.
You wouldn't emphasize part of that schema
Okay.
or that plan would be, don't just spend all your time here watching these things.
Yeah.
Get over here. We've got a thing going on down here. Come now. We'll be together. See them in person. Bring your camera and film it and post it later. But
Right. Yeah.
encouraging the fellowship. And I think overall the negatives would diminish and the healing of the human culture is
No,
possible.
that's interesting. So, say, is there a way to use this technology, though it's been used now to breed social comparison, increasing? I'm just looking at the screen. Could you use that same technology to drive engagement with other people, engage, or drive engagement with knowing what Scripture has to say, and people who've had, people who have been transformed by Christ's work? That's an interesting question. It seems to me you could, and there's an aspect of this as I've been, just even as we're sitting here talking. I remember hearing back somewhere, I think it was elementary school, but there was a time where commercials would have these subliminal messages in them. And
Right.
the hard part about the subliminal message is that it's below my level of consciousness. So I can't actually watch and filter it. I'm watching this thing and I want to eat pizza because of a message that I never even recognized.
Right.
So we went and decided we're not going to do that because that's not healthy for society. I just kind of see the counter here where we say, okay, we know this is going on. We're going to drive engagement, even though we know it's not healthy for society, So, but there's this, are there things going on in there in the way the media is developed now that you would have to change in order to use it? Because it seems like that addictive nature is almost subconscious or subliminal. You're almost not even aware of it going on. Because, I mean, I've done this. It sounds like you've done this. It's like, wow, I spent an hour looking at this and I only intended, so there's that, there, you see how there's something more than conscious thought driving what's happening there.
Yes. And that would, I mean, I chalk that up to the sinful human nature. But again, if the engineers or the
Mhm.
people at the top are regenerate, right?
Mhm.
And I mean, I would even, well, I won't get into too much minutia, but I meditate not all the time, but on the direction of technology,
Mhm.
and God is a creator, and one of our reflections of him is our ability to innovate and be creative, right? And so I don't view technology as an inherent evil. I
Right.
view it as something God uh, programmed us to come up with, and
Mhm.
that ultimately He is going to use it for good. And so that's kind of the direction I think. Like it's,
Mhm.
for example, I agree with um, what's his name, Zuckerberg.
Mhm.
I mean, people thought he was a fool when he tried to change Facebook to Meta. I guess it's now called Meta, and invested heavily in VR technologies, and I think he's seeing the future, and he's
Right.
trying to get a jump start on it. And there's no guarantee that his
Yeah.
ultimate technology is going to be the one that takes off like Facebook did. But he's positioning himself for
Mhm.
that future environment. He's positioning himself to at least be a player on that
Right.
field when that becomes more ubiquitous.
Yes.
When we transition from having our supercomputer here to having our supercomputer, put it on right here and be able
Uh-huh.
to experience a fully immersive experience. That's coming, right? It's just an inevitability. And so when I think about that, I think that what excites me is when Jesus says, forsake not the assembling of yourselves together, that will give us a capacity to assemble in larger groups with people more remotely, because there's a sense of realism, even though you may know in the back of your mind that this person in front of you, I could just put my hand through them because they're technically like a holographic representation, but they're really there in avatar. You're going to be in a
Mhm.
3D environment where somebody's going to be somewhere else in the world in the same technology and in the same room with you'll be able to hear them. You'll be able to, you will be able to experience their facial expressions. Communication in a text
Mhm.
is like cave drawings compared to
No,
communication fully immersive, and you will have genuine fellowship with people that aren't in the room with you. I believe that, like, you will be able to
Mhm.
experience genuine worship services in a church that's having an experience on the other side of the world where you get to log in and be there as well. I see that as something that's coming.
So
um
let me ask a question, because I love roller coasters, and give me a second here to develop the story, and you'll see where this is going. So I love roller coasters. I find the older I get, the less I can ride roller coasters, and having the half-hour wait in the line is actually kind of nice at this point.
yeah, yeah.
But I just love the thrill of the way it feels and the physical sensations. A number of years ago, one of my kids, for their gifts, for birthdays and stuff, they would generally get trips somewhere instead of having more stuff. And so we went to Universal Studios, and Universal Studios has these virtual roller coasters. I mean, they physically move you around, but a lot of the roller coaster sensation is what's being visually piped into your mind. I found that in doing that, I would physically get tired at the riding the actual roller coasters. I got headaches riding these others, and it seems like there's something where what I'm being shown and the physical reality don't mesh up, and my mind is responding to that. So now we're in virtual reality. Um, is it the sort of thing that there are just certain people who their mind isn't going to register and they can't engage that world? Or is there something where we can replicate part, but there's something about the physical I'm there with you that's just different?
I think it's a both and, right?
Okay.
I mean, I think there's absolutely people as they're discovering. I don't know if this has changed much in the last 5 years, but the headgear, there's like 25% of the population just can't, right? It's
Yeah.
just so nauseating, and so it affects
Right.
them so adversely.
Right.
And I don't know if that number is going to shrink as technology advances, where they can adjust for those things. And then another thing is, I mean, I've been wrong making certain predictions. I mean, I remember making the prediction, we'll never be able to talk to each other, see each other on the phone everywhere. We're like, look what we're doing now, right?
Right.
But working in the industry I work with, the movies that have predominantly practical effects versus the movies that have predominantly CGI, the studies have been done that people enjoy the majority practical effects, because then you just have this intuition. You can tell when that's just digital images flying across. Like, it's just not as engaging, it's not as believable, it's not as immersive, it's not as pleasurable and entertaining experience. So there will always be, I think, like, you look at how incredibly photorealistic
Right.
the images become. I can still probably 9 times out of 10 determine, even in the most realistic, will they ever get to a place where it's so convincing? Is that a human or is that a digital character, right?
But I have a question with that. Do you think that do you think that as we become more digital in our interactions, that our ability to tell the difference will diminish? And so there are people who would now claim that, oh yeah, my online interactions, that's my community. where I think you can make an argument that some of that is because of lack of knowing what a real in-person interaction, real healthy in-person interaction. So it's the diminishing of the healthy in-person interactions makes the digital interactions seem more realistic or better. Do you think that plays into our ability to perceive or enjoy the practical versus the digital there?
Well, my instincts are there will definitely be a shift to it'll be harder and harder, which means there'll be more and more people that are more and more duped. I don't know if that is necessarily less discriminating or less able to distinguish. I think it'll be a smaller group of people that are better at distinguishing or recognizing, but I don't think it'll ever you'll ever get the entire human population completely convinced. But like in this virtual reality, the direction they're going right now is creating avatars rather than a camera video of you. You create they'll generate something that looks like you, but it's an avatar, and people will be like, well, I don't want my real face shown. I want to look like I'm 25. So that's the avatar I want to use. It's me when I was 25.
Right.
And depending on which app you're in or which program you go into, it'll be predetermined, like, oh, you can use whatever you want here. Or somebody will say, no, I just want only people with their only want cameras on. And so it's actually them. And I think you'll just have those differences. There'll be a market out there, and you'll be able to go to the ones you want, go to the ones you prefer. If you don't want anybody to know you, go into a place where nobody knows each other. Or if you want real interaction, go to one that their rules and regulations are it has to be camera projection, right? So it'll be different products.
I'm curious, as Christians, how do we respond to this? Because I agree with your assessment or your statement and description that if as Christians we're not engaged in this, I'll say the same thing with science. If Christians aren't engaged in science, then all the non-Christians get to decide what we're doing with science. The way to influence that is to be a part of it. And I think it's important that as Christians, we don't look at the technology as bad, but how do we engage the technology and use it as well?
Yep.
Now, for me dealing with it, I don't get to be a social media developer or the person who's driving it. I'm the user, and I'm amongst a bunch of users. As a church, what do we do? How do we as a church respond to that? Do we just say, well, this is the way life's going, let's adapt to it? Do we need to be fighting it at some level? Do we you get the nature of my question. It's like, how do we respond to this well?
What's a practical response of the church, right? So I think a couple of things come to mind instantly is knowledge, right? I think this conversation you and I are having, people should watch it because we're delving into things people aren't thinking about in ways that people don't normally think about. So I think that as Christians, we need to be knowledgeable of what's going on, what's coming, what's out there. And then another practical thing, other than just being informed, is supporting and promoting startups or existing technology companies or products that when you research, you realize, oh, these guys are moral. They've drawn a line, even they're Christian, or even if they're not Christian, but what they are doing is only using this technology for the benefit, and it's clear, right? And so
there's an aspect of carrying a little bit of the burden or the cost of saying, is this being used well, instead of, well, this is just what everybody's doing, if you will. There's an extra amount of work that we need to do to be responsible with it.
Yes, and
point, yeah.
Say that again. I missed.
I think that's a good point.
In my line of work, right? I work in an industry where there's a lot of evil and a lot of people intending to do evil and intending to portray evil in a glorifying way, right? And so the argument, even all the way back in college, was like, is it art imitating reality or reality imitating art? And the answer is yes, right? So because the answer is yes, because some people watch something and are influenced by it to do evil, and then you can blame the thing combined with the person's evil heart,
Mhm.
And then there are people that do horrifically evil things, and you want to depict it accurately. So
Yeah.
that's where the art imitates evil. So what's the solution here? What's the well,
Yeah.
my solution, the conclusion I came to is, as a content creator, there's a moral obligation to not portray evil in a glorifying manner. Right? It's
Okay.
the excuse is, well, it really happened. It really happened. It's like, well, it doesn't matter if it really happened. If you know somebody's going to be influenced by your art to repeat it, you must demonstrate it. If you're going to demonstrate it at all, you must demonstrate the consequences. You must avoid anything that brings glory to that, so that, right? So it's
Yeah.
not an open field. I can do whatever I want because I'm an artist. It's like, no, I need to bear the responsibility because my art is going to influence people. It means I need to make those moral decisions in the stories I'm telling and how I'm telling them. Same with technology.
Even if telling it in that glorifying way would make you more money, make you more popular, get more
Right.
people, win awards, whatever.
That's the mammon, the god of
Yeah.
mammon, right? That's the evil. All right, we're out of time, my friend. Well, congratulations, new president, whoever. I really enjoyed this conversation, Jeff. As I do with every
Yeah.
conversation with you. Thank you, my brother.
Thanks
I
for
love
having
you. All right. Bye, everybody. See you next time. End recording.